Hey everyone, it's patch 3.20 on Crucible, and I wanted to make a guide on how to make a custom crit for Midend Dagger. Now, even though this is being released in Crucible, if you are watching this in the future season, this should also be exactly how you want to make it in the future, unless there is some sort of weird crafting overhaul or some sort of weird crafting league that changes the way we want to make items, which most likely is not the case. If this is just a normal season with no crafting changes at all, this guide will be exactly how you want to make one in the future. So we're going to talk about how to make a dagger that looks somewhat like this. We're going to talk about the cheap way of doing this, the expensive way of doing this, and a few alternatives between on how to make a starter dagger and a endgame dagger. So let's start with the cheap dagger. If we want to make a dagger, the first thing we need to decide is, are we going to go with a synth implicit or are we going to go with a fractured base? Now, I would not go with a synth implicit unless you are making a super high-end dagger, as first off, synth implicits will be expensive as they will be most likely candidates for mirror tier items, especially 3 synth implicit items. But the one synth implicit you probably want to look for is double damage, and even this by itself is typically very expensive and probably not worth looking for unless you're making something super, super high-end. What I'd recommend for someone who is making a starter weapon who is ready to play this build for the first time is to go out and look for either fractured tier 1 critical chance or fractured tier 1 critical multiplier. These should be ridiculously cheap, and with their prices, you can even find a perfectly rolled base. You can look for 38% as they both go 38. It does not matter which one you get, as the weighting for everything we're going to do is exactly the same the whole way through. So just buy whatever you can, make sure it is a Imperial skein, and make sure it is a decent item level. Once we have our skein, we are then going to be spamming Deafening Essences of Zeal. These give us up to 30% attack speed, and if we look at tier 1 attack speed, it only goes to 27. And we are going to either be spamming for crit multiplier or crit chance based on what you get. So if you buy fractured crit chance, you're spamming for crit multi and vice versa. This is a 1 in 48 or so to get. It really is not that bad, and you should be able to hit this within maybe 2 to 3 div at most. It really is easy to get, and once you do that, your suffixes are saved for the rest of the craft, and you'll have perfect tier 1 suffixes the whole way through. Once you've done so, you should have a dagger that looks something like this with tier 1 crit multi, tier 1 attack speed, and tier 1 crit chance. Obviously, your crit chance or crit multiplier are going to be fractured, or at least one of them is. And what we're looking to get here is at least one open prefix. Now, if you do not have an open prefix, you'll have to annul and pray that it hits a prefix. If it doesn't and it removes your suffix, then you are going to have to spam again. It is a 1 in 48, so it shouldn't be too costly to get it back. Once you do have an open prefix, you're going to go to your bench and craft suffixes cannot be changed. And then you are going to use a Veiled Chaos Orb on it. What this is going to do is it's going to give you a veiled prefix. And if we quickly go look at the unveiling odds, if you have a open prefix, you are going to craft increased physical damage on it. Any of the tiers work, as this will block it. And this will give you a 37% chance at chaos damage. This will give you a 37% chance at spell damage and mana regen, and a 37% chance at spell damage and non-chaos. All 3 of these outs are fine. And what we're going to do is we are going to orb. Then we're going to be crafting on physical to block as much as we can to make this a little bit easier to hit. Any of them work. And then we are going to unveil. Now, we can have a little bit of unfortunate RNG happen like this, where we do not get it. But if this happens, you simply are just going to go back to your bench. You're going to craft suffixes cannot be changed again. And you are going to Veiled Chaos Orb one more time. Now, if it does not have an open prefix like this, you unfortunately are going to have to unveil and then annul, as you need an open prefix at the end of the whole craft. If this happens again, we would just annul. We would get an open prefix, hopefully. We would craft suffixes cannot be changed again, and we would Veiled Chaos Orb another time. The whole goal here is to just get a veiled prefix with an open prefix on it, as we need it to finish the dagger with a craft at the end. We tried again for a 3rd time. Now we would just simply craft physical damage on it again to block as much as we can. Again, which one you pick up does not matter. We'd unveil. We unveiled spell damage. And then to finish the craft, all we have to do is we just change the physical damage roll that we put on it, or hits can't be evaded. The overall cost of this, assuming you don't get unlucky, as I did in the showcase, should be around 6 div or so to make yourself a perfect tier 1 dagger for this build. Lastly, If you really wanted to, you can X-Slam for the ridiculously low chance at +1 spell or +1 chaos. There is nothing that you can hit that would break your dagger. Or you just leave it be as is, and you'll be happy and on your merry way. Next, I want to talk about the upgrade to this, how we can make this better. So the next thing we would go for to make this slightly better is +1 chaos. To get to that, we would be doing the same exact thing. We would be wanting to spam our dagger and get a dagger that looks something like this. Now, what you could do here is you have two options. You can either start your craft with a +1 chaos gems dagger, which will make this a lot more expensive, but potentially easier to finish the whole craft. This really depends on harvest prices. Or you would again start with either fractured crit multiplier or fractured crit chance. Let's assume you started with fractured crit multiplier or fractured crit chance. What you would do is you'd get your suffixes again. And what we want to do now is we want to put suffixes cannot be changed. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to the harvest bench, and we are going to be putting add remove chaos modifier. What this is going to do is it's going to either give us +1 chaos spell skill gems or added chaos damage. We have a 25% chance that's going to give us chaos spell gems, and we have a 75% chance that's going to give us chaos damage. So let's go back to our dagger and see what would happen. If we were to add remove chaos, then we can only remove the suffixes can't be changed, and it's going to either give us chaos damage or it's going to give us our +1. The reason we want to do add remove is because we want to have two open prefixes at the end to be able to veil chaos orb and to be able to craft hits can't be evaded. So if this happens and we get added chaos, all we're going to do is add suffixes can't be changed onto it again, and we will add remove again. It will guarantee +1 chaos. It's a 50-50 if it's going to remove the added chaos damage or the suffixes can't be changed. We hope it's going to remove the added chaos damage, and if it doesn't, then we would have to annul and 50-50 to see if it either removes the added chaos damage or if it removes the chaos spell gems. What we would do from here is we would go and get a Ailsling for this, as we cannot just veiled chaos orb, as that would re-roll the +1 chaos skill gems. So we would go over to heist, we would go to Ailsling, and then we have to Ailsling for a 50-50 that it removes the suffixes cannot be changed instead of the +1 skill gems. Once we do this, we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to go to the bench before we unveil, and we are going to craft % physical damage to give us the best unveiling odds. We are then going to unveil, pray that we hit either spell damage or chaos damage. Unfortunately, we didn't. If we do not, then we would simply put suffixes cannot be changed and annul and pray that we eat up the mod that we rolled on here. If it doesn't and it eats the chaos spell skill gems, you would just immediately go and add remove chaos again and try to get yourself clean chaos skill gems. But assuming we do hit the unveil and get lucky and we get either spell damage or chaos damage, we would then simply finish the craft with hits can't be evaded. Now, making this dagger the way it is going to be substantially more costly than the previous dagger I showed you. This on average will cost you maybe 30 to 40 div to hit, and most of that just being in suffixes cannot be changed and in harvest crafts. But if you do hit this, you have the best in slot dagger for this build. You physically cannot make this any better other than getting a synthesis implicit. Now, why don't we quickly talk about how to craft this with a synthesis implicit? Again, this is going to be extremely costly, but you are asking yourself for this because look at the base price alone for a double damage one in Crucible. What we would do with this is we have to change the way we would go about crafting the suffixes. What we're going to have to do is we are going to have to abuse some harvest augmenting in order to get our suffixes going. So what we would do is we would first, again, start by spamming essences. We are always going to be using Zeal to go for attack speed, and we are going to be spamming them until we hit either tier 1 crit chance or tier 1 crit multiplier. We do not care which one we hit. So eventually we will get a dagger that looks something like this. We will have, for example, essence attack speed, and then let's say that we ended up getting critical strike multiplier as our tier 1. Now, if there is another suffix on here, we will have to annul because we need the third suffix to be empty. Once we have this, we would go and put suffixes cannot be changed. And then what we have to do is we have to go over to harvest and do add, remove, critical strike chance. We cannot do reforge because it does not guarantee that we would get a roll. We have to do add, remove, and we will get either spell crit chance or we will get crit chance. Now, based on how good of a dagger you want to make, depends on how much you're going to be doing this. Obviously, if you're making something insanely good, you're going to do this until you get tier 1 critical strike chance or tier 2. Say if you have critical strike chance already, you'd be doing this until you get tier 1 critical multiplier or tier 2. But this is the only way to realistically get your 3 suffixes on here. If we want to look at the cost of you attempting to essence spam for example, even if we want to go for tier 2 crit chance and tier 4 crit multiplier, as you can see, is on average 1 in 900, which is substantially more expensive than doing add remove to get to this point. Once you have your suffixes, you'd go about the same way crafting the prefixes as I mentioned in the previous dagger, the mid-end budget option. We would start by putting suffixes cannot be changed. Then we would be doing add remove chaos, and this would give us either a 1 in 4 for chaos skill gems or added chaos. Once this happens, we would add suffixes cannot be changed again, and then go and ale sling slam for a 50-50 on it eating the suffixes cannot be changed instead of the added chaos. We would then go to the crafting bench and we would craft percent physical damage, unveil. Hopefully we get lucky and we hit either spell damage or chaos damage. If not, we have to try this step again and unveil until we do. Then we finish the craft with a hits cannot be evaded. Now, doing this dagger the way I just showed you might have looked really easy. I did get quite lucky in Craft of Exile, but the super high-end dagger with a synth implicit on it is going to cost you most likely close to 100 or so div to craft. There are quite a lot of 50-50s that you need to win, and there are quite a lot of harvest crafting attempts that you need to do to be able to get to this point. But this would be the ultimate dagger with spell DD on it and maybe some other implicits. So to finalize everything and to go over everything again, the cheap dagger will cost you around 10 div or so to make. The mid-end dagger will cost you around 40 to 50 div. And the super high-end best in slot dagger with a synth implicit instead of the critical strike chance will cost you over 100 div, depending on your luck. I hope this helped you. I hope you can make a nice dagger for your cast and crit build. And I'll see you guys in the next video.